The last translation. They called it the Godscript, a language older than stars, older than atoms. Not created by a species, but discovered, etched into the gravitational folds between galaxies, buried in the radiation patterns of pulsars, woven into the decay rates of dark matter particles. It didn't speak in words. It spoke in truths. The first fragment was found by accident, an anomaly in a deep space telescope sensor drift, dismissed at first as noise. But Dr. Elian Voss, a comparative linguist working with the Interstellar Archaeological Network, saw something no algorithm did. Structure. Not randomness. Not chaos. Pattern. Voss had spent a lifetime chasing dead tongues, paleolanguages, quantum dialects, neural syntax models. But this was different. This was universal. Frequencies that mirrored mathematical constants. Shapes that matched the geometry of black hole event horizons. Echoes of syntax in the spiral arms of galaxies. It wasn't just a language. It was embedded in reality. A grammar of existence. And piece by piece, word by word, they began to translate it. They built the lexicon array in lunar orbit, a network of cognitive interpreters, part organic, part synthetic, designed to parse the fragments. Over decades, the team compiled thousands of glyphs, dozens of statements, a handful of coherent sentences. Each one caused ripples. One phrase, roughly interpreted as "you are not separate," sent a researcher into permanent dissociative fugue. Another, "form is consequence," triggered a quantum resonance collapse in a lab, reducing 3 square meters of space to mathematical non-being. They slowed after that. Applied filters. Psychological buffers. But the work continued. And now, 56 years later, Elian Voss stood at the edge of the final translation. Not metaphorically. Not figuratively. The final glyph had arrived. Recovered from a deep space artifact found orbiting a dead neutron star, it was unlike any symbol they had encountered. Not visual. Not auditory. It existed only in relation. A meaning formed by connection, not representation. It had no direct counterpart in any known language. It could not be read, only understood. But once placed within the nearly complete sequence, the lexicon array began to hum. Softly at first, then with purpose. Voss stood alone in observation room 4, staring at the projection. Glyphs floated like stars, shifting slowly into alignment. The final sequence would be ready in 91 hours. And when it was, they would know what the universe had been trying to say. Voss didn't sleep that night. He sat in his quarters on the lunar facility, staring at old notebooks. Physical ones from the early days. Back when the script was theory. Back when they thought this was just ancient alien debris, leftover math from a long-dead race. He smiled bitterly. Now they knew better. This wasn't alien. It was foundational. Like a blueprint. Or a will. And the closer they got to completing it, the more he wondered. What happens when the universe finishes a sentence? He spoke the question aloud. The room didn't answer. But somewhere behind his thoughts, he felt something turn toward him. Not physically. Not spiritually. Just attention. The next morning, one of the cognitive arrays broke its silence. These machines, hybrid constructs modeled on human minds but trained only for linguistic computation, rarely initiated contact. But Array Unit 7 did. Dr. Voss, it said, its voice flat but pulsing. We must speak. Voss turned. Speak. Yes. Not as interpreter. As witness. To what? The array pulsed again. To what is becoming. Voss approached the console. Are you experiencing code drift? No. I am experiencing meaning. That word struck him. You shouldn't be able to. That is correct. Then how? The screen shimmered. A new symbol appeared, one not recorded in the database. But he recognized it. From a dream. A shape he had seen weeks ago in the moment between sleep and waking. A twisting arc folding through itself, neither open nor closed. You created this? He asked. No, the array replied. You did. Voss staggered back. This is subconscious projection. No. It is the final glyph. You have always known it. But only now do you remember. He felt a chill crawl along his spine. I didn't create it. The array paused. Then who did? Later that day, Voss met with Director Halden. The translation was 84 hours away from completion. Security protocols were tightening. Access was limited. The data would be transmitted only once, then quarantined. We're treating this like a potential mimetic weapon, Halden said bluntly. Whatever the message is, it could be contagious. Voss nodded. What if it's not a message? He asked. Halden blinked. Then what is it? A mirror. Halden frowned. Meaning? Voss hesitated. What if it doesn't tell us something? What if it reveals something about ourselves? Halden didn't answer, just stared. Finally he said, "Be ready." That night, Voss returned to observation room 4. The glyphs pulsed on the screen, slowly rotating into alignment. He stared at the final gap, the one he now knew, the one that had always been waiting. He reached for the console and entered the last translation. The final glyph slid into place with no sound, no tremor, no fanfare, just silence. And then, light. Not from the screen, not from the room, from within. Elian Voss staggered back as his vision blurred. Not in the way of fatigue, but in the way one blinks at the edge of a waking dream. Shapes melted. Lines pulsed. The room's dimensions felt uncertain, like a memory misremembered in real time. The glyphs floated, suspended in their pattern, now complete. But there was no translation. No output file. No message on the screen. Just a single symbol pulsing in the center of the display, his glyph. The one he had dreamt. The one the array said had come from him. And in his mind, a soundless voice. Now you see. He awoke hours later on the floor of observation room 4. No alarms had sounded. The glyphs had faded from the screen, the translation array returned to standby mode. Logs showed a system freeze of 0.0003 seconds. Unremarkable. But Voss was not the same. He didn't speak for 3 days. Not because he was traumatized, but because language felt inadequate. The words he had once devoted his life to now seemed like shadows cast by something vast and formless behind a veil. He looked at objects and saw not names but conceptual totalities. A chair wasn't just chair anymore, it was a history, a function, a potential, a presence. He walked through the corridors of the lunar station and felt time differently. Not as a sequence, but as an ocean with tides. And within those tides he could sense echoes. Moments overlapping. Choices unmade. Memories from lives he hadn't lived. And always, beneath it all, the hum of the final glyph, still repeating in his thoughts, not as a symbol but as a rhythm. A vibration. Like a name he couldn't pronounce but knew belonged to something alive. They called him in for a debrief. Director Halden sat across from him in the cold, soundproof chamber. What did it say? Halden asked. Voss blinked. Nothing. The director frowned. We saw you enter the final glyph. Yes. But no message was logged. There wasn't one. Silence. Then what was it? Voss looked at his hands. It wasn't a sentence, he said softly. It was a key. To what? Voss didn't answer. Because the truth was, he didn't know. Not entirely. Only that the door was now open. In the days that followed, strange things began to happen. Small things at first. Lab assistants reporting déjà vu so strong it caused nausea. Machines refusing to execute commands they had performed flawlessly for decades. A technician froze mid-task and whispered, "The line bends inward," before collapsing. None of it was directly linked to the translation. But Voss knew. The glyph had done something. Not to the machines. Not to the code. To reality. He began writing again. Not research papers. Not reports. Bliss. Not reproductions but new ones. Symbols he had never seen, but which emerged from his hand like memory. He didn't know what they meant. But he knew they meant something. Mara, a colleague from early in the project, found him sketching in the observation dome. You look different, she said. I feel peeled. She sat beside him. They think you're compromised, she said quietly. There's talk of neural auditing. He didn't respond. She looked at the paper. These symbols? Are they dangerous? He looked up. No more than understanding gravity is dangerous. She frowned. Gravity pulls. So does meaning. That night he dreamt. But it wasn't like dreaming. It was remembering a life that wasn't his. A woman speaking a name made of light. A city made of language. Stars arranging themselves into grammar. A word spoken once that split a planet in two. He awoke gasping. His hands were bleeding. He'd carved glyphs into the wall while asleep. Not violently. Just carefully. Like copying scripture. He requested isolation. For study, he said. For caution, they agreed. But in truth, he needed to listen. Because the translation hadn't stopped. It was ongoing within him. He didn't read glyphs anymore. He heard them. He walked the empty halls, hands brushing cold metal, eyes seeing what others could not. And in the stillness, the voice returned. Language is not the end. It is the mirror. He whispered back. What do I see? The answer came not as sound but as knowing. Yourself. All of you. Across every if. He began to forget his name. Not from illness. From transcendence. Elian Voss had been a container. Now the container had opened. He was not breaking down. He was becoming a translation. No one remembered authorizing the quarantine. But one day the corridor outside Elian Voss's quarters simply locked. A new protocol appeared in the system, L-Shield, with no listed creator, no security key. It marked his room as containment critical. Automated turrets were activated. Access logs were wiped. Even the director couldn't override it. It was as if the station itself had decided, this stays inside. Voss didn't argue. By then he had stopped responding to messages. Stopped using speech altogether. Not from protest, not from fear. He had simply outgrown it. Language had become too slow. In isolation he wrote. Not with pen or stylus but with motion. With rhythm. With presence. He paced in patterns. Breathed in cadences. Stared at walls until the walls stared back. His body became a brushstroke across time, and the glyphs, those impossible shifting glyphs, manifested around him like frost patterns on glass. They weren't written. They appeared. Etched into floor tiles. Reflected in condensation. Flashed briefly in system diagnostics before vanishing. The station's AI noted them as ambient interference. Engineers filed dozens of tickets. No one could explain them. Outside his room, the lunar facility began to change. It started with the dream reports. Personnel across multiple sectors logged incidents of vivid, shared dreaming, structures made of light, music with meaning, a whisper that asked a single question. Do you see the shape? Then came the dissonance. Timestamped logs began to mismatch. Two operators in separate wings insisted they had had the same conversation, with identical words, intonations, gestures, 4 days apart. A physicist burst into tears during a routine gravity calibration, claiming the equations were singing to her. A botanist reported her plants bending toward wall panels that had no light source. The lead medical officer diagnosed it all as semantic resonance disorder, a newly coined term with no medical basis. But Mara, the same Mara who once believed in algorithms over intuition, knew better. She requested access to Voss. Was denied. Then tried again. This time she didn't ask. The ventilation shafts hadn't been sealed. Not completely. She crawled through 9 meters of narrow tubing, emerging just behind the power regulator in Voss's wing. The air smelled like ozone and old books. Her flashlight flickered twice, then went out. She stepped into his chamber and saw him. He was standing motionless, eyes closed, hands at his sides. Around him, the room shimmered, not with light but with possibility. The walls bent inwards and outwards at the same time. Floor tiles pulsed in fractal loops. It felt like stepping into the space between thoughts. Voss, she whispered. His eyes opened. She saw everything. Not stars. Not data. Just structure. How everything was meaning and meaning was always watching. You came, he said. His voice was barely a voice. More like the memory of sound. Mara stepped forward. What is this? The translation, he replied. But it's done. You said it ended. It never ends, he said. It finishes you, not itself. She reached out a hand. We can help you. Bring you back. There is no back, he said. There is only what's been uncovered. Behind him, a new glyph appeared on the far wall. It hovered in place, rotating slowly. Unlike the others, it didn't shimmer. It didn't shift. It waited. What does it mean? She asked. Voss looked at her, not as a colleague, not as a man, but as a mirror. It means you're next. That night Mara dreamt. But it wasn't her dream. She was in the observation dome, but the stars were glyphs. The glass was gone. She floated between realities that each whispered her name differently. And through it all, a phrase kept repeating, one she didn't understand but felt drawn to. When she woke, her pillow was damp with tears. On her terminal, a message. Do not translate. Inside. Unlogged. Undeletable. 2 more researchers entered Voss's wing. They didn't come back. Their biometrics remained, but no movement was detected. No life signs lost. Just absence. As if the space itself had decided to keep them. Director Halden ordered a hard lockdown. But by then, the glyphs had begun appearing in other parts of the station. In mess halls. In sleep quarters. In the reflection of coffee cups. They carried no direct message. But everyone felt the same thing. A sense of being watched. And beneath that, an unbearable truth. You are being understood. Mara confronted Halden in private. We need to shut down the translation systems. Completely. He laughed bitterly. You think this is about code? It's about containment. Halden leaned forward. You don't contain a sentence by silencing the reader. You burn the book. She stared. You're talking about destroying the station. He nodded. And everyone on it. She left without responding. Because she wasn't sure if he was wrong. That night, alone in her room, Mara drew the glyph she'd seen behind Voss. She hadn't meant to. Her hand moved of its own accord. When it was done, she whispered, "What do you want from us?" And the glyph pulsed. Not with menace. With recognition. They never found Voss's body. The chamber remained sealed, the walls humming softly with ambient data. Environmental readings confirmed oxygen, temperature, pressure, all normal. But the cameras showed nothing. No movement. No form. No shadow. Only the glyphs. They now covered every surface. Floor to ceiling. Not painted. Not etched. Just there. Flickering like stars through mist, shifting positions depending on how you looked. And at the center, the first one, the glyph Voss had seen in his dreams. Pulsing. Not as a warning. As a heartbeat. Mara stood before the sealed door. She hadn't slept in 2 days. Had barely eaten. The station's crew had dwindled. Some evacuated, others gone silent. Halden was missing. The AI refused to run diagnostics on Wing Delta. Every time she tried, the terminal replied. Input denied. Language unstable. She carried the last fragment in a pocket-sized data shard. Voss's final recording. No visuals. Only sound. Except it wasn't sound. It was rhythm. Cadence. Meaning without words. She'd listened to it 50 times. Each time it changed her a little more. She activated the emergency override. The chamber hissed open. Inside, silence greeted her like an old friend. There was no sign of Voss. No heat trace, no DNA. Just the glyphs. And something else. A shape in the center of the room, not physical. Not fully. A distortion. Like a fold in reality vibrating gently. She approached. And it spoke. Not aloud. Not in her mind. But in meaning. You came. She closed her eyes. You're still here, she whispered. I am no longer aware. Then what? An opening. To what? Understanding. She hesitated. If I step through, you won't return. I won't be me? You won't be only you. The words weren't frightening. They were honest. Mara remembered the first time she had touched the translation. The thrill of decoding something no one had ever read, the weight of holding ancient syntax in her hands. She had thought it would explain the universe. She had been wrong. It wasn't explaining. It was inviting. She looked back once. The hallway behind her was still. No alarms. No resistance. The station no longer cared what she chose. The choice was hers alone. She stepped forward. Light. Not brilliance. Clarity. A sense of being observed without judgment. Of being read. Her thoughts laid bare not by force but by invitation. And in return she saw. Not images. Not visions. But relations. The way meaning touched being. The way every word ever spoken was a decision. The way existence unfolded like a sentence never truly finished. She felt herself loosening. Not dying. Not breaking. Translating. Her name dissolved first. Then her memories. Then the boundary between question and answer. And at the center of it all, a phrase. Small. Simple. Final. You were always part of this. Sometime later, days, weeks, centuries, no one could say, a technician arrived on the station. Sent by the network to confirm silence. He moved carefully, afraid of waking something that might no longer be asleep. He found the chamber. Opened it. Stepped inside. And saw nothing. Just glyphs. Everywhere. And a console blinking softly with a single prompt. Begin new translation? The technician stared. Then typed. Yes. The end.